Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Scientific Terminology. Today, we're going to be talking about carbon dioxide, or CO2, which I have called the greenest house gas. And we'll get to why that is in a few minutes. So let's get started talking about this specific molecule. So what exactly is carbon dioxide? Carbon dioxide is a molecule composed of one carbon atom and two oxygen atoms. And the oxygen atoms are double bonded to the carbon atom in the middle. So if you can imagine it, you've got a carbon, and then attached to it with a double bond is an oxygen, and on the other side as well. Okay. Carbon dioxide is an incredibly important part of all biological processes, since it is a reactant in photosynthesis and a product of cellular respiration. So these two main reactions that happen to keep life going involve carbon dioxide. So it is a very important molecule in the natural order of Earth. So now, it's also a greenhouse gas, and what does that exactly mean? So in terms of climate science, CO2 is important because it is a greenhouse gas, and greenhouse gases are those kind of gases that can trap and reflect heat, much like a greenhouse does. So greenhouses work by letting heat in and then keeping it trapped in that building, which allows warm weather plants to grow. Greenhouse gases do the same thing. So they create kind of this barrier around the Earth. And so when heat comes in and strikes the surface and comes back up, trying to escape, the greenhouse gases keep the heat inside around the planet. That's why our planet is habitable, because it's warm enough, because it traps that heat. Our atmosphere helps keep our planet warm. Now, the issue is if that carbon dioxide increases to a point where global temperatures get too high, which is what we're experiencing right now, and that will affect our climate and then what's going to happen to us. And an example, if you want to look at where we could be heading if greenhouse gas effect goes out of control, is Venus. That planet in particular is hotter than the surface of Mercury, and that's because of the greenhouse gas effect that has gone way over out of control there. So here's a picture of what the greenhouse gas effect looks like. And as you can see, here's our atmosphere around Earth, and it traps heat. So the sun pours heat on our planet, and it's going to bounce off of like lakes and streams and everything, and it comes back up. But these gases protect and keep some of that heat in here, and that's what keeps our planet warm enough for us to thrive in. Now, in the past, carbon dioxide levels have never really been that much of a concern because the CO2 concentrations weren't that high. But that's because carbon on this planet is part of this well-regulated natural cycle that kind of kept the level of atmospheric carbon dioxide high enough to warm the planet, but not too much to create this kind of nice balance where we're able to survive on this planet. And like I said, that's the carbon cycle. Here's kind of a diagram showing how it works, right? You've got carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It gets brought in by trees. The trees ends up putting in the soil. It can end up getting into the water, right? There's all sorts of different places that carbon is able to be transferred. Now, the real issue that we're running into is that we're burning these fossil fuels, and that's releasing a lot of carbon that had been trapped underground into the atmosphere, and that's kind of breaking the cycle. Right? Over the past 200 years, we've been burning these fossil fuels, and the main here's our picture right there as a factory, right? The main product of that is carbon dioxide, as well as water. And so that carbon dioxide is then being released into the atmosphere, and that has increased the level of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. It's trapping more heat near the planet instead of letting some of it go away like it's supposed to. And since that's happening, right, we're starting to run into some issues. So it's our fault, really, right? Humanity has disturbed the carbon cycle by pulling up the large reserves of carbon that were underground, that were supposed to be kept there for a long time, and we're burning through them really, really fast. And so now we've basically overburdened one step of the system, right? The ability for the planet to uptake that carbon that we're burning is just not possible. There's no way for it to do that. And so there's a lot of data to show that the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is much, much higher. So if you take a look at this graph here, right, this is showing our carbon data from 800 all the way until now. Quick question probably, how do we have that data, right? We weren't really keeping track of this at 800, whatever, right? Well, we kind of were. So basically, we've been able to get carbon data from these ice poles. Basically, they're these really long sheets of ice in the Arctic, and we drill them. And they're called cores. That's what they're called. And the cores have air bubbles trapped in, and we can measure the amount of carbon dioxide in those air bubbles and compare it to other years, and know roughly the amount of carbon dioxide available in the atmosphere at that time. And so, if you can see as we go back, thousands and thousands of years, it never gets above this level. But then here's 1950. It's above the highest historical carbon dioxide level. And this is where we are now, much, much higher. We're talking 120 parts per million higher in the atmosphere than before, which is just enormous, right? And this is clearly our fault, this jump, right? So what can we do to fix this? Well, there are lots of different things that we can do. And there's a lot of people who are trying to oppose these measures, trying to make it so that we can't do these things. And we could develop cheap and effective alternative fuel sources. We're working on that, right? We've got wind turbines, solar panels, things like that. People are working on hydrogen fuel cells. These are all things that we've been working on to kind of get away from burning hydrocarbons. We could develop carbon capture technology, which is been difficult, but we're still working on it, trying to capture carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and use it somewhere else, or put it somewhere else. Plant forests to help reabsorb carbon dioxide, right? We've been cutting down forests and rainforests, so by planting more trees, we could help reabsorb some of that carbon dioxide. Restrict the use of hydrocarbon fuels, which has been a real sticking point in at least American politics for a long time. And then regulating businesses who pollute and force them to upgrade their facilities, which we've been kind of doing, but also not quite. So there's lots of different things that we can do, and there's much more than on this list, but these are just a few suggestions. Here are some resources if you want to look further. And of course, once again, thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe and hit the bell so you can know when I have more things coming out, so you can learn about science and the other things I teach on this channel. Once again, thank you so much for watching. See you soon.